Breaking tonight, Florida's Secretary of State orders a recount in the state's key Senate and governor races, while Democrat Andrew Gillum withdraws his concession in the governor's race. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us. And thanks to all of you for once again making Justice #1 last weekend and for keeping liars, leakers, and liberals on the New York Times bestsellers list for over 3 straight months. We've got a big show on deck for you tonight with all the late-breaking details on the Florida recount, plus live reaction from Congressman Matt Gaetz, Corey Lewandowski, Katrina Pearson, and Brian Kilmeade, to name a few. But first, my open. There's a clear double standard between the left and the right. Behavior that you only see on the left and not the right. If you need further proof that there's a double standard, that the left has brainwashed society, look no further than Florida. The fraud going on in Florida as an acceptable solution to our election process is the last straw. How, after 4 days, are the same 2 counties that we've repeatedly had trouble with in the past still able to say their election is not final? How is that possible? How is that okay? As I speak to you, Florida's Secretary of State has officially declared a recount for governor and United States Senator in Florida. On election night, though, both Republicans were declared the winners over their Democrat opponents. Republican Rick Scott was declared the winner over Democrat Bill Nelson for Florida's U.S. Senate seat. Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis was declared winner against Democrat Andrew Gillum, a local mayor. But tonight, everything is in flux. Democrat Gillum, the loser candidate who conceded on election night, has just today officially pulled back his concession to Republican Ron DeSantis. So what's going on? The Democrats are refusing to accept the declared results of the national media. Theirs is a double standard. You say we lost, we'll say we won, and in the words of DNC lawyer Mark Elias, an operative from Clinton Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele fraudulent dossier intended also to disenfranchise us on a national presidential election, we'll do a recount and we will win. So how do they do this? Lo and behold, they find missing ballots. And where do they find these ballots? In deep blue counties run by Democrats in Florida, Broward and Palm Beach. Now, Broward and Palm Beach counties may sound familiar to you because in 2000 there was a hand recount in Palm Beach County because the Democrats didn't want to accept the results of a presidential election. In 2006, there was another recount started by the Democrats. In 2016, another recount, and in 2018, another recount in the same 2 counties. Now, folks, there are 3,141 counties and county equivalents in the United States. So you tell me how 3,139 counties can get their votes in 30 minutes after the polls close, but not these 2. The other counties get it right. There's even a county that suffered a Category 4 hurricane in Florida that was able to turn in their ballots 30 minutes after the election. But these same 2 deep blue Democrat-controlled counties in Florida, where Republicans won in the 2 most important races, can't get their act together. But it's not the first time. There's one person who seems to be at the center of this, a Ms. Brenda Snipes, the election supervisor in Broward County, shown here. Now, you may know about Brenda because in 2016, a judge called her out for destroying ballots that benefited her friend, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So election night, Broward reports thousands of votes, 634,000, and now there are reportedly thousands more votes. You're kidding, right? A primer. Every county is supposed to hand in all early voting and absentee ballots within 30 minutes of the polls closing. Most counties already count those ballots before election night. But now in a lawsuit brought against Ms. Snipes, Governor Scott argues that Snipes is refusing to comply with a campaign request for voter and ballot information. At an emergency hearing yesterday in Florida, the governor asked the court to have Ms. Snipes turn over records detailing how she counts and collects ballots. Snipes, as might be expected, is refusing to turn over the records, saying it's inappropriate for a court to intervene this time simply because Scott wants the counting process sped up. What is even more outrageous is that after Snipes destroyed ballots illegally in the 2016 election, her premature destruction of the ballots under court review in a pending lawsuit was described as unlawful and in violation of the Public Records Act. That court in 2016 cited a similar case where the individual was dismissed, saying dismissal under these circumstances is an appropriate sanction. But the court went even beyond saying that about Snipes. They said her violation was twofold. Number one, Snipes violated state and federal retention requirements. And number two, Snipes violated the affirmative responsibility to preserve evidence. Why was this woman not fired? Yet today, Ms. Snipes lives on to mess up yet another or overturn yet another election in Florida. And if that's not enough to infuriate you, after the court's decision about Ms. Snipes, the state of Florida announced it would be monitoring Broward's 2018 election. Now, let me tell you what a mess we're in. There are reportedly thousands of newfound ballots. Each one is 5 pages long. Do you think a woman who doesn't tally or canvass along the way, who loses thousands of ballots, who doesn't want to turn them in 30 minutes after the polls are closed, like 3,139 other counties do, should be trusted? Do you think she should be allowed to view 5 times, because that's how long the ballots are, 5 pages of thousands and thousands of missing ballots? Folks, this is lunacy. Voter fraud is insidious. It causes people to think their vote doesn't matter. But it's worse than that, folks. There are reportedly transcripts now that prove that when the Democrats say they want every vote counted, they mean it. Yes, that's what I said. But it's not just your votes. It's illegals' votes that some lawyers in these canvassing hearings for Democrats want counted. A report out today says lawyers for Democrats Gillum and Nelson are objecting to the rejection of votes cast by non-citizens. So when the lawyer for the Democrats, Mark Elias, famous for his role in the dossier creation that was an attempt to disenfranchise our duly elected president, says he's going down to Florida to win, he should have added, by any means. And that's my open. If you love my opening statements, you love my new book, New York Times #1 bestseller, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals, The Case Against the Anti-Trump Conspiracy. And here with reaction to my open and all the developing news in the Florida recount drama, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz joins me now. All right, good evening, Congressman.
Good evening, Judge. I think they're still finding ballots for Al Gore down in Broward County. It is a mess down there. It's like a banana republic. And when you've got supervisors of elections that violate transparency laws, that stand in the way of the constitutional rights of Floridians to see information, then you undermine our confidence in the election process. That's why getting the records, getting the ballots, and getting a just result is so important to all of us.
You know, what I find interesting is that in the hearing yesterday, Matt, and I know, Congressman, I should say, and I know that you're familiar with what's going on. When Governor Scott had requested the opportunity to review and to count and find out how they were determining the ballots, then what she says is, you don't have a right to look at this stuff just because you want it sped up. What is that about?
Well, the law in Florida requires the supervisor of elections to make regular reports about how many people voted and in what method they voted. In Broward County, they simply ignored those laws, and then when we tried to use our Public Records Act to get the information, they stood in the way. After the judge ruled that they had to allow us to inspect the information by 7 o'clock that night, I showed up with Governor Scott's lawyers to try to see if we could learn more, and we were stood away. We were told to come back at 10 o'clock the next morning. So time and again, you see the supervisors of elections violating court orders, violating state statutes, and that's the type of thing that allows fraud to grow.
But
the good news, Judge.
Yeah. Go ahead.
The good news is that Ron DeSantis has a margin of victory that is beyond the reach of any fraud. He will be the governor-elect and then the governor of Florida.
Okay, so what
it's
you're
Senator
saying,
Nelson,
Congressman, excuse me,
what
you're saying is that Congressman DeSantis in the gubernatorial race has more than a half a point ahead of that local mayor, Gillum. Correct. So there's not going to be a recount.
He's actually under.
Congressman,
there will be a machine recount. There will be a machine recount. He is under half a point, but our expectation is there could be, his margin of victory is beyond the scope of any fraud. So he will have a machine recount. We have no objection to that whatsoever. We want every legitimate legal vote to be counted.
Congressman, hang on. I want to ask you this question. If a judge determined, as I just read in my open, that this woman Snipes, who is the election commissioner, what is her official title?
Supervisor of elections.
All right. That this woman Snipes 2 years ago violated state and federal law. He actually cited a case where someone was dismissed under similar circumstances. Would you please tell me why this woman was not dismissed, given the fact that the judge's decision suggests that she should be? And here we have Rick Scott, the governor, who could have dismissed her, who's now suffering because he didn't dismiss her as a candidate for Senate.
Brenda Snipes is either too stupid or too corrupt to be running elections and counting ballots in Florida. The case you laid out is compelling. The reasons for her removal are just irrefutable. Unfortunately, Governor Scott hasn't used his authority to suspend her and put the state supervisor of elections in charge of this office so that we can find what the hell is going on in Broward County. So I think there's plenty basis for removal. There is legal authority that would allow the governor to remove Dr. Snipes, and there is a court order that she violated yesterday. So I think that we should not be waiting around any longer to see if new trucks show up with new ballots or who knows what other shenanigans could be possible. We need to have all the cards face up.
Of course.
And in a transparent process, there won't be fraud. It's when you don't have transparency that fraud can exist.
Clearly, but you're saying new trucks show up? What are you talking about?
Well, no, last night when I stood outside the supervisor of elections office, there were trucks moving things on and off. Now, that could have been totally harmless. It could have been furniture they were moving in the middle of the night. But when I tried to videotape it, there were armed police that said that I was a safety hazard and I was not allowed to videotape what was being moved in and out of the Broward supervisor of elections office at night.
All right, Matt Gaetz, thanks so much for being with us this evening. Still to come, more information on that. And now to yet another surprising turn of events, this one in New Mexico, where my next guest has not yet conceded in her race for that state's southern 2nd District congressional seat. She believes the race is being stolen away. Currently serving in her 4th term in the New Mexico House of Representatives, Yvette Herrell joins me now. Good evening. Good evening.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, you ran in New Mexico, District 2. You've run 4 times. You've been a legislator for 8 years. You're running for an open seat, one that was held by a Republican for the last 16 years. Donald Trump won that district by 10 points. And now you run against a first-time candidate. Her name is Xochitl Torres Small. How do you pronounce her name?
That's pretty close.
Okay. All right. I think we have a photo of her, the candidate that you ran against. Now, all the entities who were representing all the parties, New Mexico Dems for Democracy, on election night declared you the winner. NBC, CNN, MSNBC, the Albuquerque Journal, Town Hall, everybody announced the race and you won. You actually give a victory speech, and then about an hour later, something happened. Why don't you tell us?
Yes, about an hour later, we were contacted by the Secretary of State's office, who said they had magically found 4,000 ballots that had not been counted.
Okay, and this Secretary of State, what is her name?
Maggie Toulouse Oliver.
Okay, and I assume she's a Democrat?
She is a Democrat, that's right.
All right, so, and then within another hour after this Democrat Secretary of State says we've got 4,000 ballots we've got to add, did you get another phone call?
Right, then after that, about an hour and a half later, so within about 2.5 hours after the election was called, we get another call and say they found yet another 4,000 ballots that had not been added to the ballot count.
All right, so now we've got a total of 8,000 new votes after you've already given your victory speech. Now, the question that I think is significant is that when you ask, how did this all happen? There is an individual who's the county commissioner appointed again by Democrats. What was her excuse?
Yeah, the county clerk over there, her excuse was there was just more ballots than they thought. They actually, first they said they forgot them. They did not realize they had them. Although that's very telling, since they knew there was record voter turnout in absentee ballots.
All right, so then the next day they start the recount or add these new ballots, and you would have won by 1,800 votes. Now she's declared the winner by 2,800 votes, correct?
Correct. That is right.
Was this fair and square?
Pardon, what did you say?
Was their call fair and square?
I really don't think that it is, because we have a second congressional district race where everybody goes to bed on Tuesday night thinking that I've been declared the winner, and then suddenly on Wednesday morning they start hearing that there were 8,000 ballots that came up out of nowhere. And no, I don't think that it was. I think that maybe we need to look into it a little bit more.
All right, and what are you going to do when you say that you're going to look into it a little more?
You know, at this point, this is about voter integrity and restoring voter confidence. And we've had over 100 documented complaints about some of the things that happened during this race. And so we need to look into it, shine some light on it, and make sure if there's problems, let's fix them.
Okay, Yvette Harrell, we're going to follow this story. Thanks for being with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing how it ultimately ends up. Thanks for being with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Katrina Pearson is here tonight. So is Brian Kilmeade. They're coming up. But first, the midterms are over. Maybe not for the Democrats, but for the rest of America. So where do we go from here? Former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski is next to tackle that question and more as justice rolls on. Florida once again at the center of a recount storm tonight as the post-midterm election drama has only just begun. Former Trump campaign manager and author of Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State Undermines the Presidency, Corey Lewandowski, joins me now with reaction. All right, Corey, you heard my open. Did you? Did you hear my open?
I did, Judge. Yes, I did.
Okay. You heard my open, then you heard Matt Gaetz, and then you heard Yvette Harrell, who was running for Congress and declared the winner in New Mexico in the 2nd District. And then the same in Florida. All these situations involve Democrats saying that they're finding ballots. What's going on?
You know, Judge, this seems to be a pattern, particularly in this election cycle. We've now seen this in Florida with the governor's race and the U.S. Senate race. We've seen it in New Mexico, but we've also seen it in Arizona. We see in Arizona where Martha McSally, the congresswoman who's running for the retiring seat of Jeff Flake, was up by about 24,000 votes on election night. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats are saying they're finding more votes, and she's down 9,000 votes. It's a swing of 35,000 votes, and there are thousands more votes in Maricopa County that haven't been counted. Now they're saying that a woman who is probably going to be declared the victor on election night, Martha McSally, is probably going to lose that race. Now, in Florida, here's what you see. I know it's the home of Mickey Mouse, but talk about a Mickey Mouse operation in Broward County. I mean, this is ridiculous. Look, Ron DeSantis, his recount is going to be perfunctory. He has a recount that's going to go through the machine. It's a machine recount. But in Governor Scott's case, Governor Scott is only up 1/4 of a percentage point over the incumbent U.S. Senator. So they're going to hand recount this. We've lived through this operation down in Florida 18 years ago. I can't believe in 2018, with all the ballot integrity issues that we talked about in the last election cycle, all of the outside influence, all of the supposed people who are trying to influence the election and trying to break into our election system, we still have people in Florida who can't count to the number 2 of the number of ballots that were cast.
But you know
this
what's
is
amazing?
just a complete Mickey Mouse
Corey,
operation.
What's amazing is in the lawsuit from Broward County. I mean, I have it right here. In the lawsuit from Broward County, the state or the judge criticized her and suggested that there is a dismissal, a basis for dismissal. They allow her to stay there, and now they're suffering the consequences of it. And the state said, we're now going to monitor Broward in 2018. Is the state incompetent? Because at some point, you have to say to yourself, you know, after a while, you let them fool you. You're the fool after 2 or 3 times.
Well, you're exactly right, Judge. And don't forget, the state of Florida now is the 3rd largest state in the country. It's got 29 electoral votes. And the importance of that state going into the 2020 election cycle cannot be overstated. Look, Florida is a truly purple state. Donald Trump won it in an overwhelming fashion against Crooked H. But we know it's going to be competitive in 2020. And if Democrats are going to be controlling areas like Palm Beach County and Broward County, where the plurality of the Democrat votes are coming in, it reminds me of Texas when LBJ ran. They basically just said, how many votes does he need to win? We'll fill out the ballots and we'll turn him in. Why are we not doing a better job of protecting the integrity of the ballot process in Florida?
Well, you know what? And plus, there's another piece to it, and I'm probably going to do it next weekend, and that is about the voter rolls themselves. You know, there was talk, there are reports now that the Democrats in Florida, when non-citizens were declared invalid as voters, that the Democrat lawyers said, no, they're valid. Of course, Mark Elias has since come out and said, oh, no, we don't want that. But, I mean, how could this be so penetrable? How is this not something that is protected? Where does the federal government come in on this?
Well, look, the Secretary of State needs to do a better job in Florida, obviously. The federal government has to have oversight. I know that the Department of Homeland Security was monitoring places for outside foreign influence hacking. Maybe we should be monitoring for the stealing of the elections from those individuals who are working at the boards of elections. That's where it seems to be all the problems are. The fact that we have videotape of them moving ballots in private individuals' cars who are alone with these ballots with no integrity whatsoever, that alone should potentially just get rid of all those ballots down there. I want every ballot counted, but how
where
do
do you get
any
that
integrity
from?
whatsoever?
Corey, where do you get that from? There's been reference by another guest tonight. What's with these private vehicles and ballots? Talk to me about that. Where are you getting that from?
Well, So there was a number of videos that have been shown outside of the Broward County Elections Office where private vehicles were pulling up and they were literally taking ballot boxes out of the cars. And there was one driver in the vehicle and they were taking a ballot box out. What happened is it looked like the outer areas of Broward County were transporting those ballot boxes to the headquarters, but they were doing it through private individuals in their own cars.
I think one of the things we've got to do is make sure that there was actually wrongdoing there, and that's something that we're looking into. Corey Lewandowski, thanks so much for being on Justice Tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And Brian Kilmeade is still on deck. So is Brandon Tatum from Turning Point USA. But next, my political panel debates the midterm results and the Democrats' efforts to drag things on. Katrina Pearson from Trump re-election and Chris Hahn are up next. Will the Democrats' tactics work in Florida? Don't miss this one.
I am replacing my words of concession with an uncompromised and unapologetic call that we count every single vote.
Uncompromised and unapologetic call that we count every vote. That was after Congressman Ron DeSantis was declared the winner of the gubernatorial race in Florida. So, how is it that Democrat nominee for governor of Florida, Andrew Gillum, withdrawing his concession earlier today as the Florida recount begins? My panel ready to battle it out, Chris Hahn, along with advisor to Trump 2020, Katrina Pearson. All right, guys, how is it that this happens? I'm replacing my words of concession with an uncompromised and unapologetic unapologetic call. Now, I think, Chris, I'm going to go to you first, but please let's save time. We all agreed that every vote needs to be counted. We don't need a filibuster on that. But why is it, Chris, that in 2 counties in Florida, Broward and Palm Beach, that we keep having new ballots just showing up? How does that happen?
Look, all I could do is take the word of the Secretary of State of Florida, who was appointed by Rick Scott, who's one of the candidates in this race, whose office today said there was no foul play in Broward or Palm Beach. Rick Scott should actually be thanking the incompetence of the Broward County Commissioner, who designed a ballot that caused 25,000 people in a heavily Democratic district not to vote for U.S. Senate in that race. If there's any wrongdoing there, that was it, and it was not intentional, I don't think. But if the machine recount doesn't count those, people then just skipped over it because of a poor ballot design, and that might just make Rick Scott the U.S. Senator.
But that's not the question I asked you. Go ahead, Katrina.
Well, look, if we're talking about whether it's incompetence or fraud, you know, Judge, I think there could be a little bit of both here. Particularly, you heard Gillum choose his words carefully. Every vote should count. Now we're hearing that illegals are voting. And if you look at what happened in Broward County today, they have illegal ballots mixed with provisional good ballots. So they don't know which one's which in these boxes. You had a citizen just stumble upon a Broward County election equipment, including a box of provisional ballots that was completely unattended that were turned in today. I think it's pretty obvious what's happening here. Yes, we could do a recount by machine, but the goal here is to find enough votes to get the margin close enough to do a hand count, because as every good socialist and communist knows, it's not about the number of votes that get to determine the election, it's those who counts them, and that's what they're going for.
You know what, Chris, what about the fact that, Chris, hold on, what about the fact that this woman, Ms. Snipes, was called out by a court of violating 2 laws, almost suggesting that she be dismissed, and she is again at the center of either incompetence or, at worst, fraud? Who's a Democrat finding more votes for Democrats enough to overturn election calls?
Yeah, so again, Katrina said they're finding ballots. That's all nonsense. That's not happening. The Florida Secretary of State, a Republican appointed by Scott, has dismissed that allegation. Okay, I think that this woman definitely made some mistakes in this election when she designed the ballot poorly.
You're
and I think
talking
the voters who elected her should reconsider. Brenda Snipes, yeah, and I think that the voters who elected her should reconsider sending her back, because clearly she can't design ballots, and that's probably something that is very important, and will probably be the difference in this election. But all of these allegations that are being thrown around are just not founded on anything. The Secretary of State and the police that were sent there by Governor Scott both said that there has been no wrongdoing there.
Have they even done an investigation? Come on, Chris, they haven't even done an investigation.
They were there.
They're doing the investigation.
It is the job of the Secretary of State to investigate.
Really?
They're absolutely doing the investigation now. And here's the thing, Judge. We have a situation here. This is not Broward County's first election. This is not her first election either. So she just suddenly did the wrong ballot? She created a bad ballot? No, that's not what's happening here. They're not even reporting the numbers to the office in the required amount of time. They're not being transparent here. Again, all of the other counties can seem to manage to get this done, but they can't. And you have to pretend to not really know what's going on in order to make the argument, Chris. Something is not right in Broward County, and they need to get to the bottom of it. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. This is a nice made-up scandal, Katrina, to distract from the president's miserable defeat on election night last week.
Okay, all right, Chris, let me ask you this.
State houses and almost 40 seats in the House of Representatives. And this is a nice distraction. I don't know how it's going to end.
The
I think Scott will probably be elected.
I'm going to pull your mic, Chris. When I tell you to stop, I want you to stop. Now, listen to me. You said his miserable loss. Bill Clinton lost 52 seats midterm.
That's right.
Barack Obama lost 13 seats and 63 seats, I think, in 2010. And then this president lost 6. You want to call that a miserable loss? You are so wrong. Now keep fighting.
He lost There were
6
350 Republican losses around this country in the most gerrymandered map that we've ever seen in the history of this country. Okay, so for the Democrats to pick up almost 40 seats and flip the House of Representatives and only lose maybe 1 or 2 seats in the Senate in the worst map they will ever face, it's a miracle, and it's a crazy victory for the Democrats. 7.5%.
That was basically the average. The fact is, Democrats severely underperformed in an election where 88% of the nightly news coverage was negative towards Republicans, towards the president. They were supposed to gain seats in the Senate, and they failed miserably.
And thank you both.
What do they call?
Good night, and thank you
House
both.
leader
Now,
with
you're
one
not
more
used
vote
to
than the other
seeing this
leader?
guy up like
Speaker.
this, guys. You're not used to seeing this guy this late at night. Fox and Friends co-host Brian Kilmeade is up way past his bedtime to join me on Justice for a revealing chat about his new book, and I'll get his take on the craziness of my last panel.
Well, it's great,
and
yes.
in Florida.
They're
Don't
still
go
talking,
away.
I think.